On the morning of December 2nd, 1989, at 2:22 a.m., a boy was born in a small three-bedroom home to a single mother with 7 other children. He was the youngest, and consequently the runt of the family. He was not addressed by his name, but rather referred to unendearingly as 8. 8 wasn't particularly big, nor athletic, and as far as intelligence went, he was average. He wasn't extraordinarily handsome, both conventionally and unconventionally, but he wasn't hideous to look at. In fact, one of the main things that stood out about him was how little he stood out. What he did possess, though, was striking vision. Doctors were astounded to find out that 8's eyesight could only be classified as beyond perfect 25, comparable to that of an eagle's, second only to a hawk's, and this rare gift did not go unnoticed, quite the contrary. An economic opportunity was afoot. You see, in the year 1990, the biggest sneakerhead boom the world had ever seen occurred. Michael Jordan's 1984 Nike Airships had finally hit market, and buyers were hungry for a sniff. It caused an unprecedented spike in sneaker culture. Shoes were being sold and bought faster than a new dog learning an old trick. The stock market became utterly irrelevant as middle-aged men invested their life savings into shoes. College funds liquidated themselves before parents' very eyes and begged to be invested in a sneaker or two. And at the epicenter of this sneaker epidemic was 8. His vision proved to be a valuable asset as fakes and phonies flooded the sneaker scene. With his bare eyes, he could identify real and faux leather from miles away. Magnification was not needed. There was no middleman. There was only 8. Eye doctors around the world coagulated into a black market shoe ring with 8 as their leading man. He would be the deciding factor between someone getting $1 million or one black eye. Once 8 was 2, he had verified 234 shoes. When 8 turned 5, he was dealing the big bucks. He authenticated the original Air Jordan worn by Jordan himself, sold to an anonymous buyer for $1.2 million. He authenticated more shoes than a dog with a foot fetish. Air Jordans, Air Jordan 1s, Air Jordan 1 highs, Air Jordan 1 5s, Air Jordan 11s, and even Air Jordan 12s. With his astounding sight, he ushered in a Pax Romana of sneakerdom that wouldn't end until he said so. By age 9, he molted out of his previous title of 8 and adopted the Realtor, a title given to him by fans, not because he sold realty, but because he sold reality. A tangible, rubbery, commercially laced reality finally tucked in wrapping paper and boxed in scrutiny-proof cardboard. By age 12, he no longer dealt in the black market shoe ring, but instead achieved notoriety on a mainstream level. And at age 18, once the Realtor became a household name, he took on his hardest task yet, becoming a small, independent business owner. He bought a storefront in the city and put a large neon pink sign that read, "The Realtors," outside his window, followed by another sign right next to it reading, "You bring it, I'll judge it, no customer turned down," with a smiling emoji tacked onto the end for posterity's sake. Success was, suffice to say, instantaneous. Sneakerheads flocked to the store faster than geese flocked to bully a toddler who strays too close to the river's edge. Shoes were sold, shoes were thrown out, auctions were hosted, marshmallows were even roasted. The store was so independent, in fact, that it didn't need no man, and it grew legs. The store and the Realtor lived their life on the road, the miraculously walking store going to wherever the shoes took them. He was hailed as a modern-day soothsayer, an oracle, a hype beast's Baba Yaga. As the years went on, he developed a routine, cut his process down to the bare essentials. How does one determine if the shoe presented before you is the real shoe? After much debate between the eye, the laces, the vamp, he deduced that he needn't look any further than a shoe's tongue, heel, and sole to properly determine its authenticity. From that point on, every day was the same. Tongue, heel, sole. The process was whittled down to a 2-minute endeavor at max, and at the end of every 2 minutes he would simply utter, "fresh" or "nah." These words became the words he lived by, and those his clients would die by, day in and day out, real or fake, fresh or nah. He became sedentary, doing no more than what was asked of him, saying one of his 2 words, continuing the one life of his he ever knew. The night of July 16th, 2022, 8:32 p.m., the Realtor finished his last job of the day. He determined a pair of shoes claimed to be Kanye West's Nike Air Yeezy sample shoe that he wore to the 2008 Grammys were indeed fresh, and the shoes sold for $1.8 million to the CEO of Grubhub the next afternoon. At an unknown time, just as he was closing up shop, a woman walked in. "I'm closed," he said. "Come back tomorrow." The woman did not move. She stood there, fixed. The Realtor noticed the woman's eyes, intelligent but in a challenging way. "Your sign outside says no customers turned down," she muttered. Her voice was hoarse and quiet, but it was apparent this was not the way she often talked. "I know what my sign says," replied the realtor, the hot neon pink washing over him. There was something about her that made him feel almost obligated to oblige. She intrigued him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't quite sure how to judge something. "I need you to tell me if something is real," she whispered. Only then did he realize she wasn't holding a pair of shoes. She wasn't wearing any either. And this wasn't the only thing that stuck out about her to the realtor. Her clothes were dull and worn. Her skin was covered in a strange film, or... No, her skin was the film. It was almost imperceptibly translucent in a way that was more than a few degrees separated from normal. Her lips cracked at the surface, and she had lines running down her face for miles. This was no sneakerhead. The realtor had seen this before, but he couldn't quite place his fingers on it. Was she a ghost? Perhaps an alien? And then it hit him faster than the stench of piss hits New York tourists riding the subway for the first time. Worn clothes, untanned skin, face in need of moisturizer. She was poor. Surrounded by a life of luxury, where immorality was exchanged for immortality, and monetization shrouded demonization, he simply forgot what a poor person looked like. He had seen this in his mother and siblings, but his eyes were always sharper than his memory. Suddenly, he was 8 again. He realized why he felt obligated to this woman. He asked her what he can do for her. She spoke. "I need you to tell me if my life is fresh or not." Fuck, he thought. But then he considered. He was indeed a modern-day soothsayer. His vision was beyond perfect. If anyone could estimate the worth and authenticity of the human experience, it was him. But how? How does one determine if the life presented before you is real life? There was no wrapping paper, no box with a pleasingly unchanging checkmark that dripped of a wet dream dreamt by a divorced stockbroker. But nonetheless, there was a shoe. First, he went to examine the tongue. Then he worked his way to the heel. And lastly, he found the soul. His legend still presented itself to his hungry eyes. It must be the same, he thought. Hours passed by, and the process went far into the night, into the morning, and into the noon of the next day. The realtor stopped taking shoe requests and devoted his rapt attention to this break from his monotony. The store was closed for the rest of that week, and consequently the rest of the month. He deemed this judgment as the most important of his career, something he would be truly known for. And he was not wrong. The internet caught whiff of the phenomena as regular customers were baffled by the temporary closing of the store. And once the story of the realtor and his current client hit the front page of Reddit, well, the rest is search history. Headlines flooded the streets. Is life fresh or nah? The news became reported on and live-streamed globally as the story made its way around the world. On an international level, people went feral awaiting his verdict on the woman's life. The realtor was the most common baby name for boys and girls from the year 2033 to the year 2037. It became a pastime, debating and theorizing about what his verdict would be. Nihilists assuming he would say nah. Absurdists simply throwing away the question, and existentialists hoping he would put the reality of life in his own unworn hands and declare fresh. Documentary crews surrounded the realtor like vultures surrounding a corpse, eagerly awaiting the man's decision. Press became so abundant and obnoxious that the store boarded up its own windows as to shield him from distractions. Rumors spread more than the spit of a disgruntled man in the wind. Perhaps there was no woman, no verdict to be reached. What even was her question? Was she asking if her life was real, or if this was real life? High schoolers seeking the edge of contrarianism questioned if there ever really was a realtor. Years passed. Authenticity stock plummeted and was put on the endangered species watch list as its abundance grew dangerously thin. Everyone wanted to peek in the store for hints of authentication, the one place they thought they could find it, but no one dared disrupt the process. Even time was too afraid to get involved. The realtor and the woman simply stopped aging. The science community was baffled at this new phenomena and called it the realty clause. When something becomes so mentally important to you that fundamental truths simply stop existing. It was nothing short of a miracle. The realty clause engulfed the world. Suddenly, groups whose dichotomies were once thought to be inherently contradictory gathered in unison on the streets outside wherever the store was. Hand in hand, hipsters and racial minorities, math teachers and history teachers, even husbands and their wives. The realty clause engulfed the world. What was once a golden age of sneakers transformed into a golden age of humanity. The world was more hypnotized by the efforts of the realtor than a child who is raised on Uncrustables is hypnotized by the feeling under his desk of the gum he does not yet know is gum. All the while, the world had no idea what was going on. No idea that, between bloodshot eyes and coffee-stained breath, the realtor worked relentlessly. No idea as to the business behind those boarded-up windows. The woman's request was akin to that of trying to remember something from a few minutes ago. As you spend more and more time trying to remember what exactly it was that you're trying to remember, you trick yourself into thinking you're closer. And yet the more time you spend doing this, the farther the thought gets, and the harder it becomes to reach. Eventually, the nonsense simply seems to make more sense than the not nonsense. Tongue, heel, sole. Tongue, the smell of a new pair of Jordans. Heel, the first crease on the leather. Sole, abandoning the value you once placed on the freshness and uniqueness of your J's. As the realtor toiled away at his life's work, a thought crossed his mind like an 8-year-old running across a highway. Do pigs ever forget they play in mud? And then it happened. At 4:34 p.m. on a Sunday, the windows unlatched themselves. The door of the store swung agape. The realtor slowly walked out of his small, independent business and declared to the world, "Nah." The woman's life was deemed inauthentic. Nihilists rejoiced, 4chan shit itself, and X literally blew up, and then everyone went back home, and they all hated each other again. And that was it. When asked to comment on how the greatest decision in American history was finally made, he puzzlingly replied, "I didn't make a decision. I've never made a decision." At 2:32 a.m. the next day, a Monday, the woman was found dead in her apartment. She killed herself. At 8:24 a.m. the day after that, a Tuesday, the realtor was found dead in his store. On his left arm and Sharpie were his last words.
Why was her life any less fresh than mine? I do not know. Why was her life any less fresh than mine?
I'm sorry.
Where did I mirror meeting?
It was good.